Today's episode is a reminder that our patterns around money are rarely just about the money. They reflect how we lead, how we protect, how we recover, and how we prioritize what matters most, especially when life gets unpredictable. If you've ever wondered how financial planning connects to your leadership patterns, today's conversation is going to open your eyes in a new way. Welcome to Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked, the podcast for anyone ready to lead themselves and others differently. I'm Bukhalo Gintala, keynote speaker with over 20 years of experience in HR. I'm a firm believer that all leadership begins with self-leadership, because when you choose to change your pattern, you unlock the power to change your world. My guest today is Coyne, a certified financial planner and the founder of Clarity Planning, an independent financial planning practice at Raymond James. So she works with entrepreneurial physicians and professionals, folks who value time, wellness, and relationships just as much as their portfolio. She's also a writer, a podcast host of Money Without Math, and someone who deeply understands that money is more than math. It's about mindset, moments, and meaning. Karen brings both expertise and empathy to every conversation. She's been featured in Medical Economics, Dentistry IQ, and named one of the Investopedia 100 top financial advisors in the country. But what really drew me to her was her approach. She deals in the real. She's the antidote to financial shame and shoulding. And she helps people make decisions before life makes them for you. So I want you to welcome Coyne to the show. Welcome to Beyond the Pattern.
Hello, friend. It's so good to see you. Thank you.
So good to see you. So good to see you. Thanks for making time. I'm really excited for the audience to kind of learn more about you and all that you bring. So thank you for making time.
You got it.
So first, how are you doing? How's your week been going? Before I just dive in, how's everything going?
Well, I don't know if you mentioned I have two sons and one turned 15 yesterday.
Yes.
So I was just, going down memory lane earlier this week about how is that possible? He was just born and 2010 was not 15 years ago, and that math does not math.
Right. Oh my goodness. Wow. Fantastic. Yeah. And on that note, did I leave? Is there anything else that'd be good for the audience to know about you? Maybe that I didn't touch on in the bio. Anything else?
No, you covered a lot. I mean, I'm a tennis addict, which, I'm going to come to Atlanta and we're going to get on the courts together.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably the only other piece. I talk about that. If you're talking to me, probably at some point, tennis will come up and menopause will come up. So maybe we'll get into that too.
I think sometimes it sneaks into my conversation too. Now, and I always think it's cool to hear, for certain industries, we have people that come from different backgrounds. You have a unique educational background that brought you to financial services too. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, sure. So, I think a lot of people, when they think about having a career, whether it's as a financial planner or other careers in financial services, they often picture and think about things like accounting, econ degrees, finance degrees, math. I was really good at math when I was younger and I enjoyed math. I loved math. But, I took one accounting class when I was a freshman. I was actually just having this conversation with a girlfriend. I took one class and I was like, oh, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And, instead of going down an adjacent field, I just did a 180. I just did a 180 completely. And my thought was, I'm going to go more liberal arts. And if I end up working in the field after all, I'm sure I can either learn what I need to in the field, or then I'll just go back to school and, deal with it at that point. So I made the decision to pursue a degree in art history. And so completely unconventional, but I did learn so much, so many useful things came out of this degree that, I think a lot of people would deem as ridiculous or useless, but I had a lot of experience writing and synthesizing, complex thoughts into simpler, expression sentences, and then having to deliver those thoughts. And so that's something that I believe everyone can benefit from. We can all benefit from being better readers, writers, and communicators.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, art history, I think it's a good balance between the creative and then you have some structure that I can see how it can be leveraged in financial context. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Cool.
Yes. And I think it's, when I think about the work that you do and patterns, it very much coming into financial services with this kind of background breaks the pattern. It's you're coming into the field and you bring a different lens than the typical the typical pattern. So I think that's very useful. And I've observed that in other folks who've, some of my peers and colleagues who also came from fields outside of financial services, and just how they're able to blend the two worlds and a lot of times, bring value.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So before we dive in, what's a good way for the audience to get a hold of you? Just in case after the interview, there's something that sparks something and they want to reach out. What's a good way to contact you?
Sure. I love that you do that up front. Certainly you can find me on LinkedIn, Karen Coyne, or our website is raymondjames.com/clarity.
Got it. Okay, good, good, good. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into some of the questions. So I want to start with your origin story. So I know you lost your dad when he was just 40, and it sounds like that shaped your entire philosophy about planning. What did that season teach you about patterns, not just with money, but with how we lead ourselves and respond to life?
Oh my gosh, so much, so much. It's such a loaded question. So even before we lost my dad, I grew up in a very frugal household, one income, which was his income. And my parents did the best that they could, to live within their means while raising three kids in the suburbs and, just trying to make a better life, right? Trying to give their kids a better life than what they had. So we were living outside of Chicago in the suburbs, and my dad took a job transfer. He was working for Western Union. And so we ended up in Virginia. And I was a sophomore in high school, so I was 15. And we moved to Virginia not knowing anyone other than a few of his coworkers. We didn't have a network. We didn't have friends and family there. But, we decided as a family, they actually asked me, are you okay? How do you feel about this? And I said, yeah, it sounds like it's a good opportunity for Dad. And so we just need to do it. And I think they were actually really surprised. But so off we went, right? We picked up, moved to Virginia. And then just a couple short months later, he was killed in this car accident on his way home from work. And, as like your life just changes in an instant, in a flash. You have one life and now you have a different life, just like that. So like I said, I was always aware, but even before then, of the value of a dollar. And my parents were trying to be careful with what they had and, just manage very carefully. And so when that happened, I just knew enough to know, on top of dealing with the grief and all of the emotional challenges that you have, I also just knew enough to know that there were some financial considerations too. And that, we were very fortunate that my parents had done just a basic level of planning that didn't leave us destitute, because that was another thing. If they had not done that basic level of planning, I think back and, it's very possible that I would have had to have dropped out of school to help support the family. I just don't think it would have happened otherwise. So that was not lost on me at 15. And, I saw my mom struggle. She had to take in loads of information and make big, important decisions in the worst moments, the most difficult days of her life. And that was not lost on me either. So, I had a lot of concern going into college. Like, are we going to run out of money? Is it going to be my fault if we run out of money because I'm, using it for college tuition, and I still have two more siblings that also need to go to school?
You were the oldest, right? You were the oldest.
I'm the oldest of three. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of anxiety. And even though I didn't know the numbers, even if I did know the numbers, it still wouldn't have answered the question. And that's one of the patterns that I see all the time now in working with my clients, that no matter what the number is, oftentimes there's this dread of, well, is it enough? And so you just keep moving the goalpost, moving the goalpost, moving the goalpost. And I'm sure it's very similar to what you've seen in corporate, right? Where we get there and then move the goalpost. But all that to say that, it's very unsettling, right? That unknowing, it's very unsettling.
Yeah, no, that's money. Money has a way of doing that for sure, especially when you add in the emotions of like grief and all these other things. Thank you for that. So next question is, so you work with high achieving professionals, and what are some of the unspoken patterns that you've noticed in this group that hold them back when it comes to finances or decision making?
Yeah, this is such a good question.
And you focus on healthcare, right?
We have a large contingent of clients who are in healthcare, yes.
Okay.
Not exclusively,
Sure.
but
Okay. Got it.
Yes, there are a number of patterns. One is rooted in these childhood patterns that we're talking about, so if you, for example, grew up in a very frugal household, and your parents, really had to stretch their dollars, but now you're making great money, more money than they ever could have imagined making in their lives. That is not consistent with the patterns that you grew up with. You not having to panic about being able to pay for a new vehicle in full, being able to go to the grocery store and not look at the prices, and even if it's organic, right, throwing it into your cart, not worrying about is there going to be enough money at the end of the month. That is such a distinctly different pattern from the one that you grew up with. And so I see often that even when folks have reached a certain level of success and financial security, that pattern is still deeply ingrained in how they see money, how they make decisions, the anxiety and the fear that they have around it. And a lot of times they don't even see that that is the reality. So, like recently I had a client who was apologizing because she bought a new vehicle, really nice vehicle. And, she was, she was apologizing. I know I'm not supposed to do this. And, they say that vehicles depreciate in value. And
I just think it's funny how like it's happened to me too. And I had to catch myself sometimes that relationship between your financial partner, that planner component, that financial professional, sometimes it can turn like mom daddish. Like, yes. It's like, Mom, I'm sorry. And it's like, it's my money.
Exactly. I have actually a client who jokingly says that. And she's like, Mom, I need more money, when she needs to take money. And we laugh. But yeah, so there's this sense that they owe me an explanation. I'm like, well, reminder, it's your money, A. And B, this is not 1972 and this is not your parents' budget. You're doing all the things. Your 401k, 403b is well funded. You have no debt. You have money left over. You can buy the vehicle, and this is also where you've heard me talk a little bit about how some of the beefs I have with traditional financial literacy, because it's well-intentioned, but it's for a certain audience. And when you've reached a certain level of success, a lot of that basic information no longer applies to you. And it actually works against you. It's actually hurtful because here you are apologizing instead of feeling like, oh, I'm enjoying this moment. Look how far I've come that I can go to the dealership, pick this vehicle that I love, pay for it in full, and not worry that I'm still going to be able to buy groceries at the end of the month.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it ends up being a part of the whole partnership, right? That whole conversation, emotions never go away. It just always ends up showing up in some way, it seems like.
Yes, it can take years. I mean, I've seen clients start with a mindset where they were very phobic and very anxious. One of my favorite cases that I refer to often is a woman I started working with who was extremely phobic around money, did not want to see any graphs, charts. And today, she's been named as trustee and executor in multiple families affairs. Like she's the go-to person, and we talk about that and we laugh about it often. Like, remember, but it just came from dealing in the real, showing up, not hiding in a corner, and gradual exposure, just consistently showing up to the meetings, consistently having the conversations. So the transformation has been remarkable and I love to see that.
Got it. Oh, thank you for that. So now you've built a brand that's warm, honest, and totally shame-free. I just want to get a sense for why that was important to you. And did you have to go through a period where you had to unlearn like any personal or professional patterns to even get to that point of being warm, honest, and totally shame-free?
Okay. So it's a two-part question. Yes. First, I love hearing these words come out of your mouth, and I hope that truly is what the brand conveys. A lot of that actually came from my desire to break the pattern that I've sensed in financial services, which is traditionally has been very stuffy, can be very self-righteous. Like, you got to do it this way. Can't do, oh, shame on you. Why would you do that? That's stupid. And, I really didn't like that. And when I started in financial services and I was totally new, I thought, well, who am I to tell people this is right and that's wrong when this is how they've been doing it? And they have more experience managing their money, over the years than I do. Mm-hmm. So I kind of took the perspective of let me learn and observe and let's just open up the conversation. And it's not necessarily that I'm providing a right or wrong answer. I found that a lot of times folks actually had the right answers inside of themselves. They just needed that affirmation. They needed a sounding board. Sometimes, sure, there's specific strategic, maybe tax guidance or something that they might not be aware of. But in terms of overall big picture, there's a sense inside that's true. So that's where that desire came from to build a brand that was the opposite. I wanted to kind of go opposite of what that traditional financial services flavor pattern experience looked and felt like. And then personally, yes, I think anytime, and regardless of what field you're in, a lot of us, when we're starting out in our careers, we really feel like we've got to show everyone that we're smart enough, we know enough, we're capable, we belong. And therefore, that is not synonymous with vulnerability. That is not synonymous with saying, oops, I made a mistake and I need help, right? It's the total opposite. So I don't know if it's just a matter of I unlearned these things or I just got older. The older I get, sometimes I think this is the benefit of getting older is we just get a little bit more comfortable. And then after, having been in this field for over 20 plus years, you can say, this is who I am. This is how I roll. And I'm totally okay that it goes opposite of the traditional patterns.
Got it. No, thank you. Now, I notice you'll often say how money intersects with different parts of our lives. Is there any sort of, I don't know, story or example, even personally, where you've seen how shifting one pattern helped create success with another pattern? Like,
Yeah. So
yeah.
one pattern that comes to mind, we were talking about some of the clients who bring their childhood patterns with them, right?
Yeah.
That no
Yeah.
longer fit.
Mhm.
Another one that I think makes sense here is extreme independence. And when you've solved problems on your own, you've managed your finances on your own, maybe you haven't had to rely on anyone else for help before.
Right.
What I see happen often is you might get to a point in your life where that no longer is good enough. Or, I mean, it's okay, but maybe it's not optimal. Maybe you're missing out. There's still some things that you're missing out on if you would hire some help. So so that's a pattern I'll see where folks get to a certain point in their career. It's really difficult for them to engage and help, maybe turn over some of their affairs because they've been doing it for so long. And yet, once they do loosen the reins a little bit and let someone in, sometimes it happens quickly. Sometimes it happens a little bit more over time. But there is this sense of, oh my goodness, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Yeah.
This actually is beneficial in so many different ways. And again, not necessarily from the math perspective, but also just having another set of eyes and ears, a sounding board.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great example because I can, there are quite a few things I'm doing now where I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. And for sure, I could buckle down, figure it out on my own, but you're able to move so much quicker once you collaborate, right? It just
Yes.
requires you being open to input. And so to bring in a financial expert to really partner and collaborate, I can see how that would open the door to new results, that maybe they didn't get before. So yeah.
Yes. And it can be uncomfortable. It's like bearing just like, I think about when you go to visit a physician, and you're bearing your entire history, you're bearing yourself physically. I mean,
Yeah.
I think sometimes when folks are slow or reluctant to ask for help, it's because it's scary and they don't know what they're going to be met with. Are they going to be met with someone who's going to shame them for some of the decisions and choices that they've made? And so that's why I'm such a huge advocate of, as professionals, we have to remember that this is very, sensitive. It's something that we see and deal with all the time, but someone might be coming to you for the very first time and feeling very anxious and very afraid. And so, make it a safe place for them to share all of that with you.
Yeah. No. With all your credentials and experience, I guess I assume as an expert, there's not a whole lot that, you need to grow as it relates to just the financial space. Like I'm assuming like, everything, but, we also all have some areas that we're looking to strengthen. So as it relates to money and your personal leadership pattern, is there anything more you want to share just around areas that you've had to outgrow personally, just to be more effective, more successful, working with folks?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I consider myself a lifelong learner. So always learning and far from having all the answers. And I think the pattern is probably similar to what we were just talking about, which is, when I think about early in my career, I just think it was so hard for me to admit when I messed up or didn't know something. That was the worst. And now I'll be the first to say, you know what, Bukala, you were right. You were right. And just because I say you were right doesn't even necessarily mean that I was wrong. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, right, it's not a zero sum thing. You can be right and I can learn. But I think early in our careers, we just don't want to be vulnerable. We just don't want to share that we maybe messed up or that we didn't know something. And I just laugh sometimes when I think about how often I say these words, you are right. Although I know my ex-husband would disagree and my current partner would probably also disagree but I swear to God, I feel like I use these words all the time.
No, I feel like definitely for sure. As I've gotten older, it's like just, accept when I make a mistake, my bad,
Yes.
But,
owning it like fast and furious. Just the sooner that we do, the faster we can move on. And that was a tough one. That was a really tough one.
No, makes sense. Now, you're a parent, a business owner, and a board chair. I think you serve on multiple advisory councils too. How do you stay aligned with your values when so many roles are pulling on you at once?
Yeah, for me, it's, well, first of all, it's, being in roles that do align. So if there's a role that is not going to be a good fit, then it's recognizing that, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. So you're not in that situation in the first place where you're maybe feeling out of alignment. And then secondly, is just to, I always feel like I want to contribute in a way that's useful to the organization that I'm serving, to the people that I'm serving. And a lot of times that does require authenticity. It might require speaking up when everyone else is silent in the room. And there have been times where I've, texted my girlfriends afterwards or messaged them and said, did I talk too much today? Or was I out of line? And usually the answer is no. Thank you for bringing that up. It had to be said. And so thank you for saying it. So I think it's just part of the authenticity and showing up as, how can I truly make a contribution? I can't make a contribution if I'm thinking something and not saying it.
Got it. Now, what do you hope your kids or your clients and your community remember most about you and how you showed up?
Oh my gosh, oh my goodness, what a question. I often think about that expression about how it's people remember maybe not what you said, but how you made them feel. So I think about that. I hope that people do feel and remember that energy and the warmth and the authenticity. I have a girlfriend. We often laugh like, I don't think anyone's going to say, "Oh, she was so nice" or "She was so sweet." Like, it's just not true. It's just no.
I find you to be very sweet, but okay.
I just feel like sweet isn't the word. Maybe a little more zesty or tangy. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but that's probably a bit more accurate.
But no, I hope that it's, that I made them laugh and that I made them feel special. In the case of my kids, that's impossible because they're so cynical. Mom, you're just saying that because you're a mom. Of course you're going to say that. What are you going to do? Tell me that I'm terrible? So yeah.
Got it. Now, what's on the horizon for you? Like, is there anything that you want to call out for the audience that's coming up for you, you're excited about? Anything? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a book I've been working on that has been slowly coming along. And I have no one else to blame but myself, going back to our radical honesty and owning it. So that is entirely on me. But I do hope to get that over the finish line here in the next year. So look out for that. And that's related to all the themes that we cover in the podcast, Money Without Math, that you mentioned.
All right. So Karen, there was something you mentioned earlier. I wanted to just come back to you and touch on, just because I know that you get clients at different points emotionally. They're at different points in terms of how they relate to money, right? Maybe they've built up some wealth and now they're partnering with you, and maybe they're cautious or scared. And then some might really get the value right away and just be ready to get some breakthrough results. Can you talk through just like what you've seen with your clients in terms of that transformation when it comes to working with you?
Yeah, I think one that comes to mind is sometimes when people are just getting started and they're new to investing, or they've been afraid to deal with it. They've just, kind of defaulted into whatever the options were in their 401k. They don't like to spend too much time looking at it or thinking about it. And all of that is connected to this scarcity mindset that, a lot of us have had since childhood, whether we realize it or not, right? If you grew up in a frugal household where your parents were always, saying things like money doesn't grow on trees and, how do you think you're going to pay for that? And is that a want or a need? Well, it's a need, obviously. You carry these patterns again, even when you're more successful later in life. And there comes to be a point where, in order to take the next step, you have to get comfortable with taking risk. And I think this is a great metaphor, both in leadership, it's very practical with regards to our money, but also very metaphorical, is that, this safety and concern around safety can really hold us back, and it can actually work against us. A lot of people don't realize that being too safe is actually a risk. There's always risk. And so how do we balance that? Well, we do it through things that we hear about, like with our money, through things like diversification. That's how we protect against risk. But being too safe is just opening yourself up to other types of risk. And so you have to recognize that even if you think you're playing it safe, you're still exposing yourself to risk. And so one of the things that you can do to get yourself in a good position is to learn a little bit more, get comfortable, understand what the risks are, and then make a decision that you're comfortable with about taking risk. And once you get in there and you start doing it, you experience it, then you get more comfortable, and then, you can build on that. But yeah, that first step is recognizing that those old safety patterns, the scarcity mindset, they can hold you back. The next step to breaking that pattern is often connected to risk.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that because I do feel like a lot of times we can lump risk, all types of risk into the same category, right? It's just one big ball of scary. But, really there's a lot of growth and learning and understanding and choice that can come on the other side of that. If you really open yourself up to learning the different types of risk, learning your comfort level in that context, then you can choose and make an informed decision. And you might find that it takes you to a different place that saving did. Saving's not bad. Saving allows you to be consistent, create a foundation. But for folks looking to build wealth, oftentimes it does require you stepping out of your comfort zone, taking some risks, getting educated on some new investments, and partnering with people and getting input in ways you didn't before. So I think you're so right about the mindset, the scarcity mindset. We learn even if we fail. That whole process is growth. And you can make up for it. There are people who have bought homes and maybe lost money in a few instances, then eventually figured it out. And real estate led to a game changer for them. So I totally get what you're saying. Can't wait to talk more about it on your podcast. I want to come on your podcast and talk about it. So
Done.
Sure. Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks. Now, I want to try and do something fun before we end with the conversation. There's something I play as a game called Pattern Check, and it's just a way for the audience to get a feel for another side of you. So I'm going to basically share two words, and if you could just think about which word resonates for you and why, and if you could just share that. Okay. So the first set of words is clarity or curiosity. Which one resonates and why?
Well, of course, clarity. That's the brand.
Right.
But interestingly, curiosity actually really resonates too. Can I do both? Because I feel like curiosity is the key to clarity. Curiosity actually precedes clarity. So curiosity is so important. And I think it's also can help us connect better in this very, this world that feels so divided. If we just come at it with a sense of wanting to learn, wanting to hear one another and see one another, I think that could go a long ways.
All right. Next is a spreadsheet or story.
Story, 100%. We learn more from stories than we do from formulas. So stories all the way.
Got it. Bold move or safe choice?
Bold. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. My tagline is see clearly, live boldly. So you're really hitting all my brand.
Okay.
Yeah, you're hitting all my brand marks here. Yes. Bold, bold all the way. Team bold.
Okay, cool. Deep dive or fast action?
Deep dive.
Deep dive. Okay. Were there any surprises that came up as we did that? It sounds like touched on a lot of brand stuff.
I
Any
know. It's
surprises?
so funny. I'm like, were these tailored or do you ask everyone these same prompts?
Oh, man. Well, Karen, thank you so much for making time to talk with me today. I really appreciate the conversation. There's always so many nuggets that come out when I talk with you. So, really, really excited to bring this to the audience. What's a good way, just as another reminder for everyone to get a hold of you again?
Sure. LinkedIn is probably where I'm the most active on social, and that's Karen Coyne. And you can also contact me via our website, which is raymondjames.com/clarity.
Okay. Karen's story really reminds us that money is never just math. It's movement, it's mindset, it's leadership. And the patterns we formed, whether out of necessity or survival or even tradition, they can either hold us hostage or help us heal. So here's a pattern prompt I want to leave everyone with today. So, what's one money habit that you inherited or picked up early on? And is it still aligned with the life and leadership you want today? Just something to think about that over the next week and share it with someone you trust. And let this be your reminder that it's never too late to choose a new pattern, one rooted in clarity, care, and courage. So that is all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked. Make sure to follow, share, and leave a review. And you can find all the links in the show notes and upcoming episodes at bucalaogantala.com. Thank you so much for listening and have a good week, everyone. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pattern. If this episode spoke to you, leave a review or send a message. I read every note, and you can reach out to me to get more tools and resources at bucalaogantala.com.